We're back with a new episode of Ask an Inspector podcast. I'm your host, Josh, and for this episode, we have Stacy from our Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program. Thank you for being here and talking to us about lead.
Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So, Stacy, before we get started with some of the questions, can you explain to us the purpose or the overall goal of the lead program in Riverside County?
Sure. So the main goal of our program is to protect children from exposure to lead hazards. When lead poisoning is identified in a child in Riverside County, so when there's a buildup of lead in a child's body, the state of California refers that case to our local team. We visit the child's home, conduct an interview, an investigation, and determine the source of the child's lead exposure. And when we determine that source of lead, we eliminate it so the child can get better.
Oh, wow. So there is a home visit. Is it hard to find the source of lead at times, or is it pretty easy to find?
Sometimes it can be a challenge, but sometimes we are quite successful. We have a team of public health nurses and environmental professionals that go to the child's home.
Okay.
And
So it's like a whole team of people?
That's right.
Oh, wow. So why should I worry about lead? What's the big deal?
So there are two main reasons to be concerned about lead. Number one, lead is bad for you. And number two, lead is in many things. So let's start with number one. Lead is a toxic heavy metal. So even in small amounts, lead can have harmful effects on the body.
Okay.
It could even lead to lifelong learning, behavioral, reproductive, cardiovascular, and even other health problems.
Oh, so a multitude.
Yeah, and it's especially harmful in children. So children under 6 are at the greatest risk of harmful effects of lead poisoning. Their brains and nervous systems are still forming.
Okay.
More of the lead gets into their mouths and it's taken up into their bodies, and much of this lead is stored in their bones. Lead can remain in their bodies for a long time.
And then what was the second part?
So the second part is lead is found in many things. So lead exposure is not as uncommon as you think. Dangerous levels of lead can be found in some everyday items in our environment. So lead is a naturally occurring metal, and it's been used in many products for many years. And a lot of leaded products have been phased out, but lead still may be found in and around older homes and buildings, certain occupations, hobbies, some consumer products.
So give us some examples that you have seen when you go to investigate inside a home, like the lead source. Like, what is it? You said it could be jewelry, toys. I mean, I know some of the older homes obviously have lead paint on the outside of their houses, right? So what are some examples?
Sure. So like I said, in older homes, you can find lead-based paint. So lead-based paint was banned in 1978, but unfortunately, there's still lead in older homes. So when that paint deteriorates, it can produce lead-contaminated dust, which can be ingested by children.
Okay. I hang around a lot at downtown Riverside. It's kind of where I live, so I know a lot of those homes are older. I'm assuming those homes must have lead paint, at least if they haven't been fixed up.
So if it's a pre-1978 home, it can be assumed. In fact, it's presumed that it's lead-based paint.
Wow. Okay, so then give us some more. What are some other items?
Okay, so you might come into contact with it with certain hobbies. So shooting, there's lead in bullets. There's lead in fishing sinkers. There's even lead in stained glass. Or maybe you're refurbishing old barn house doors, let's say, for your home or to sell. So these are some other ways you can get lead in the home. But of course, there's also, unfortunately, there's lead in some candies.
Oh, candies too.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Imported candies.
Okay.
We have a lot of problems with. Or spices.
So Reese's Pieces are safe.
Well, I hope so.
What about toys? Now, I know sometimes my son has little metal figurines that he paints. Should I be concerned about that?
It would depend on where you're getting the paint from. So if this is something you're getting from the store down the street or from a home improvement place, that's fine. But if you have a family member that's maybe has some old paint
Okay.
or paint that they've brought from out of the country,
Yeah.
then you'd want to be concerned.
So tell us, with adults and children, how does lead get into the body?
So there are two main pathways of lead exposure, either ingestion or inhalation. So for children, the main pathway of lead exposure is through ingestion.
Okay.
Yeah, young children are frequently crawling on the floors,
Yeah.
or furniture can be contaminated with lead dust, and they're always putting their hands in their mouth.
That makes
right?
sense. That's how they experience everything, I guess,
Yeah,
right? It goes straight to
yeah,
the
of
mouth.
course. Yeah, they're trying everything out. So they play in the dirt and they put their hands in their mouth. And,
Yeah.
and if there's lead in the soil, perhaps there's deteriorated lead-based paint nearby, and that gets into the soil, and they're, playing in the soil, and they're putting
Wow.
their hands in their mouth. So unwashed hands is a big source. And of course, like we said before, there are some lead contaminated foods, spices, candies. So if the child is eating candies that are imported from outside of the United States, or somebody's bringing it home from their home country and feeding it to the child can get lead that way through ingestion as well. Now, for adults, there are many ways, we can be exposed to lead, but most adults who have lead poisoning were exposed on the job through inhalation.
Oh.
Yep, they're actually inhaling lead contaminated dust or fumes. So perhaps they work at a battery manufacturing plant or a shooting range. In some cases, the adult is exposed to lead contaminated dust when they're just enjoying their hobby, like we said. So if they're working with stained glass or furniture, or even making lead bullets, we've seen that, they could contaminate themselves. But unfortunately, not only can the adult contaminate themselves, but adults who have occupations or hobbies that generate lead could actually bring that lead contaminated dust home, and they bring it home on their clothes or equipment, and then expose their children and family members to lead.
Yeah, I remember reading this article. I forget where it was from, but there was this lead exposure in this house, and this wasn't Riverside. The father worked with some type of lead, came home, and then it was the child's job to wash the clothes.
Oh dear.
And so the child would shake them out before they would wash them. And then that in the article, the child actually got lead poisoning from that exposure to the father's work clothes. And then it shocked me because it was like, oh man, that the fact that the dad was the one technically working with lead, but yeah, he brought it home.
Right.
And then it was like,
and it's more common than you think, because lead dust it's so fine that it sticks onto everything, and it's so difficult to get rid of. We've had parents who were, let's say they're sanding down old windows and old doors in their garage, and they're thinking, okay, and they've got it contained a little bit, maybe with some plastic, but then their child comes down with lead poisoning. So even just from sanding something in the garage, that dust is so fine and so heavy that it's very easy for them to track it into the house, or if the child walks through the garage, they can get lead contaminated dust on their hands and ultimately in their mouth.
That's something too that just talking to you now about how much do people just wear their shoes in their house, right? And if you work in that industry, and even if not, but you just wear your shoes around your house, walk on your carpet, your floors, and like you said, you have these little kids,
kiddos.
Yeah, that their whole life is like 2 feet down from the floor, right? The 2 feet and down, so they're crawling on the carpets, and you don't really think about that, but you're basically contaminating your house.
Right. Yeah. So in cases where there's a hobby, usually the parents they stop. Or if they were, refurbishing old painted items, now they're going to switch to just, getting new lumber, painting it themselves, let's say. With the occupational hazard that gets brought home, like you said, shoes, clothes, adults are going to want to leave those items outside, maintain their laundry separate from the rest of the families, take a shower right when they get home before they hold that baby.
Yeah, I've heard of families that the parent will come through the garage, actually get changed in the garage before they come into the house, because they know they actually work with lead, so they don't want to get it in, at least into the house.
Yeah, and so when we come across situations like that, sometimes it's just some education. They weren't aware. They weren't thinking that they could be
Yeah.
bringing contamination into their home. And parents are more than happy to make those changes
Yeah.
to protect their children.
I'm sure they feel awful because they probably didn't even realize it,
Sure.
you know?
And a lot of parents, they just want to identify what made my child sick,
Yeah.
please. And some of them are very, they open their homes to us
Yeah.
and allow us to come in and take a look because they want to work with us to find out what was exposing their child to lead and how can we get rid of it now so the child can start getting better.
How would I know if my child has lead poisoning? How do you find out?
Most children who have lead poisoning don't look or act sick at all. If symptoms are present, it could be confused with common childhood complaints such as, have a stomach ache, maybe they're cranky, complaining of a headache, or you might notice a loss of appetite. But the only way to know for sure if your child has lead poisoning is to have the child get a blood test for lead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
The only way.
So you could go for a while and not realize that your child.
Yeah, unfortunately. There are some children with a high blood lead level, and the parents and the children say that there are no symptoms. So they don't see any symptoms in the child, and the child's not complaining of any symptoms.
Jeez. So when they showed up to do a blood test, would any type of blood test basically show like, oh, you have elevated lead?
You actually have to order it.
Oh, okay.
So the doctor would have to order it. So if you suspect your child has been exposed to lead and you want them checked, you would have to talk to their doctor and ask for that blood lead test because they're not going to look for, they don't look for every component.
Okay.
There are some clinics and hospitals that it's just routine.
They'll just
it's a
do the
routine
testing.
well
Like a
baby
physical
checkup.
and a blood.
Right.
Yeah.
So at one, they'll check. The American Pediatric Association, they're going to recommend that each child is tested.
Nice.
I believe it's at age 2. But, with my child, I was very happy that, she was tested so early at 1 year.
Yeah, I'm sure knowing what you know.
I was,
Right?
I just couldn't wait. In fact, I didn't know that my provider would order the test at 1 year. And so I actually requested it. And she said, oh, well, good news. We're going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
so I was,
do you
I was
know what
very
I do
relieved.
for a living?
Yeah, because because I live in a home that's 1948.
Oh, okay.
1948 built. So we do have lead-based paint, and that's been something that I've been, concerned about. But as long as everything is in good repair, it's not a hazard. So if you have intact lead-based paint, there's no hazard.
Okay, I was going to ask, yeah. So it's really, it's when it starts chipping or dust, right, deteriorating, that's when you're like,
or if you have a child that is directly chewing on it.
Oh, okay.
Let's say a windowsill, right?
Okay.
So you want to watch your child to make sure that they're not displaying behaviors of actually eating paint chips or chewing on windowsills or other building components because that then so there is a potential danger, but when it's intact and it's not being disturbed, it's not.
Okay. So if I think my house has lead-based paint, what are some of the steps in protecting my family from lead hazards?
So if your home was built prior to 1978, again, it's presumed that your home has lead-based paint, and you need to be careful not to disturb this paint. If there's a reason to disturb it, there's a repair, or you're going to do a remodel, you need to take this very seriously so that you're not generating a lead hazard. So the best way to protect your family from lead exposure is to hire a lead professional. They know how to conduct the work in a safe manner. They're going to ensure that lead-based paint is handled, contained, and cleaned up in a safe way. All right, so
I'll tell you, I looked online and was like, oh, lead professional, and like so many came up. What should I be looking for when it comes to hiring one? Because you want to obviously make sure they know what they're doing, right? So what should I be looking for when I do a Google search and look up lead professionals?
Okay, so the first thing is you'll want to go beyond the Google search. So you're actually going to go to the California Department of Public Health website. They have a web page that has all of the certified lead professionals, and you're going to want to start making your phone calls from that list.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you need to make sure that these individuals are actually licensed.
Okay.
They go through training, they know what the dangers of lead are, and they know how to contain that lead during construction, renovation, repair, and they know how to clean it up in a safe manner so that your family's protected.
So the California Department of Public Health has a courtesy list?
That's right.
Nice. That makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, so...
and doing a Google search,
Sure.
get like lost in the page of advertising.
Absolutely, yeah. And you want to make sure that you have someone who genuinely knows what the hazards are and how to protect your family and themselves.
So these are licensed professionals.
That's right.
Okay. And when I mean licensed through the state of California?
That's right. So they're state certified lead professionals.
Okay. Stacy, what happens if I just want to do the work myself? Is that something that I can do? Would you recommend that?
First and foremost, I do recommend hiring a state certified lead professional. It's just going to be the safest way to protect your family. But if you as a homeowner decide to perform home improvements without the help of a professional, the state does have educational materials that homeowners can find on the CDPH website or the California Department of Public Health website. These resources are going to help you ensure you're taking the proper steps to protect your family from lead hazards during any repairs or renovations.
So stick with the professionals, really.
I think that's the best way to go. But again, if you are dedicated to being diligent about following lead safe practices, you educate yourself and you take the necessary steps to protect yourself and your family from generating lead hazards, then it is an option for homeowners.
Yeah. I liked your nice answer of basically saying, no, I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
I don't. Oh yeah, you could do it yourself because I don't.
You would have to really know what you were doing.
You just really would have to know what you're doing. But there are resources.
Stacy, to close out, where can I get more information about lead poisoning prevention?
I would start by visiting our website. It's rivcoeh.org. So there we have links to all the other agencies. So the California Department of Public Health webpage, our local nurses. So this is with Public Health.
Public Health, Riverside County.
That's right. In fact, if you want more information about getting your child tested for lead, you could actually call the Riverside University Health System public nurse, and that phone number is 951-358-5481. And it might also be a good idea to visit their website at rivcoeclpp.org.
Stacy, can you say that phone number one more time?
Sure. 951-358-5481.
All right, that is all the time we have. Thanks, Stacy, for coming down and sitting for this interview.
Oh, thanks for having me. No, it was definitely my pleasure.
And I promise when I get home, I'm definitely going to check around my house and make sure my kids are not playing with anything that might have lead.
Good call, Doug.
And again, if the audience would like to know more about lead in and around their home, they can visit the links that Stacy just went over. Those links will be attached under the video. Thanks everyone for listening. And until next time, this is Josh from Ask an Inspector podcast signing off.